In this video, we're going to look at assignment H3 in CS 151 in spring of 2020. And first we're going to check it out and see what the files look like. Okay, so I check out the assignment. There's a Readme file. The Readme file says to watch the first two videos on Chapter 2. This one in particular is related to the second video. If we go over to links and lectures, there's a playlist. We can see where things are in the playlist. Chapter 2, there's one that's operators and one that's if, and the assignment is related to the second video. You should watch them both, but this is the one that you probably be checking multiple times. Those are also in the playlist. That video ends up creating some Python programs that are in this directory. So you'll be looking at these files again after you watch that video. Okay, so there's the video to watch. The programs are over here. If you want to look at these programs on the server, we'll do that in just a second. So I'm copying that right there. And let's go ahead and do that. So if I'm over here, then there are 3 Python files that I'm going to want to have as a reference in my H3 directory. There are different names than what's in the H3 directory, so we're not having a conflict in names. If we just look at the names, there's a password.py that was developed in the video. Now you're going to do a modification of that password3.py, 3 for H3. Same thing for math practice and convert, and then we have an extra fun grading 3. Okay, so I'm going to start by just running the programs as they were. So here's password. So this password program, this password program, it is looking for a user jkinney with password 3.14 or a user couch with password OK. And that is developed over in the YouTube video. Let's look at what password 3 says to do. Okay, so password 3 says this is our user password database. So there's a user Ada with password Loveless. There's a user Grace with password Hopper, and so on. These are all historical figures that you can look up for fun. Okay, so the way the transcript is supposed to go is ask for a username and for a password. If it's correct, we get yes, and then it prints the user is whatever. If they enter a wrong password, it says wrong and it says failed login attempt. And I'll show that over here in my solutions. So if I type Ada Loveless, it just checks it and gives me a message. If I say Loveless Ada, that's the wrong way. So it says wrong. And that should match. There should be an exclamation point. Okay, so we'll stick with this and make the, we'll make the check match what's already here with the exclamation point. Okay, so that's the password. That's what's supposed to happen. These are just basically comments up here. Leave those alone so you can refer back to them. And I've given you an outline of what needs to happen. So we need to ask for a username. That's an input statement. We need to ask for a password. That's an input statement. there's going to be a big if, elif, 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 and so on to check all of these. There'll be a case for each of those. And if one's valid, then you can set the logged in variable to true. And then after the loop, you can print the appropriate, either you're printing wrong exclamation point, failed login, or you're going to print yes and the username. Okay, so that's the password file. And you have the outline there to go off of, and you have this smaller version. Okay, that was developed in the lecture, the YouTube video. Let's take a look at one of the other files, math practice. Let's run that. Okay, so this was asking to multiply numbers and using the if to test if it's correct or not. We can look at the code over here. Okay, so we input two numbers, we multiply the numbers, and then the if, which is the new thing that we're doing in this assignment, the if was checking the result. Let's take a look at, so you can look at that code. You can pause right now and look more at that code if you want, or do it on your computer. Let's take a look at what the Math Practice 3 is asking for. Okay, so here, instead of, over here we have multiple, we can guess multiple times. Over here, I'm not asking you to do that. You're going to take two numbers, you're going to ask them what the answer is. If they get the answer, it'll say great. If they don't get the answer, it says sorry, no, and just gives them the answer. So you don't have to check this multiple times, but now you also need to let them specify what the operation is going to be. So they can choose plus, minus, times, floating point division, integer division, remainder, or exponentiation. And I can show what that looks like when it runs. So I'll choose the multiplication operation. And 5 and 4. What is 5 times 4? If I say 21, sorry, nope, it is 20. And if I get it right, it says great. I've given you an outline for this one as well. Remember, these up here are transcripts. So this is running the program one time. And if you typed plus 6, 4, and 10, this is exactly what your screen should look like when you get the program finished. Okay, so here's the outline. This is the first input statement, and just leave it the way it is. That'll match mine. And then you have this choice variable. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is check the choice variable that what they typed is actually a valid operation. So if we run this one here, if I type something that's not a valid operation, like let's say capital X for times, it says invalid choice. So anything that I type that's not one of those options, it should type invalid choice. Okay, so that's going to be an if right there. So you need to check that the choice, you either can check that it's equal to one of these and with a big bunch of or you can check that it's not any of them. Okay, so depending on how you do that, the way I did it was I had code something like if choice is bad, print bad, else, something like this. So I had a condition for choice being bad. This is not real code. Then I printed my invalid. And then all the rest of this, the comments are indented because that's where it was in my code. Depends on how you write it. Okay, so if the choice was okay, then we'll keep going. We need input statements to get the two numbers, right? There's two input statements to read the two numbers. And then there's going to be a big if to compute the correct answer, right? So depending on what the operation was, you're going to have something like if choice was plus, then you're going to say answer equals, it depends on what your variables are. elif, and then all the other possible options. And if you use the same variable name there, answer, for each of those, then at the end, the answer variable has the answer. And if we go over here, so what is this? It prints that. Then there's the answer. The way I did it was I computed the right answer. I didn't tell the user yet. I then had a print statement to ask them what do they think the answer is. That is here. And remember, you have your the math practice program from class over here. So this is an example of printing number times something equal. That's one way to do it. And we had another way to do it in the H2 homework assignment. All right, and then we have an input statement to get the user's answer, and then another if at the end to check whether it's right or wrong. Okay, so that is math practice. Let's take a look at convert. So the program from class is convert.py, which is here. Okay, so this is a unit conversion program where it'll convert from miles to kilometers, kilometers to miles, astronomical units to miles, and so on. So if we run it, I want to convert from miles to AU, and I want to say 100 million. 100 million miles converted to astronomical units, it is 1.069. Okay, so the valid set of units in this program were miles, kilometers, and AU. And if we type something else, you could think about what happens, but let's just assume they type those options. Okay, that's what that program does. Let's look at what convert3 is asking for. Okay, so you can read that. You want to pause and read that. Now, what that's asking for is these are the valid conversions the program has to check for. So converting between miles and kilometers, going one way and the other. Feet to meters, inches to centimeters, gallons to liters, teaspoons to milliliters, ounces to milliliters, pounds to kilograms, ounces to grams. So those should all be possible in your program, and use these conversion factors. So I've given you, use this conversion factor for each one. Okay, if we look at a transcript, we've got miles, converting from miles to kilometers, and 10. I use this conversion factor here that I'm just going to type here. So if blah 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 miles and blah 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 kilometers, so you have to check if that's what they typed. Well, I'll say it like this: if they typed miles and kilometers. Okay, so then I'm going to do something like answer equals number times that, and I'm using that conversion rate. If they typed kilometers to miles, then you're dividing. Right, so going one way, you multiply by the conversion factor, and going the other, you divide. There's an outline for this one as well. Let's run the program first. This is convert. So I want to convert from miles to kilometers. That's 2 input statements. And then I give a number. And there it is. 5 kilometers is 3.10 that stuff miles. And the ones that you have to be able to do are these. Each one of these is kind of like 2 cases, because you could be going that way and you could be going that way. There's 8 of these, so altogether there's like 16 cases. All right, so these are examples of running the program with converting different units. And here's your outline. You need to ask for the units. So units from, units to, and a number. That's 3 inputs. Then you're going to have your big if based on the units. And if we look over here, it'll be similar to this, but it's just a different bunch of units to test for. So units from is, and units to, and depending on which ones, you're either going to multiply or divide by the conversion factor. And then print out the converted value. Okay, so that's convert. The last program here is not from class, it's just something that's very classic. So a classic assignment with if and elif is to do a grading scale. So if I give you a score, what's the letter grade? And I've made it slightly fun by giving you a logarithmic, what I'm calling a logarithmic grading scale. So maximum score is 100, and then I'm going to say, this is not the actual grading scale we're using in this class, but so half of 100 counts as an A, and then half of that counts as a B, half of that counts as a C, and so on. So to get an F in this grading scale, you would need to be, that's 1/16 of 100. Okay, so the sample transcripts are here. You have an input statement that asks for a number. If they put something that's bigger than 100 or less than 0, it says invalid. So if they type something too big, it says it must be less than or equal to 100. If they put something that's too small, it says it has to be at least 0. Okay, so there's some ifs to check the number, if it's too big or too small. And then the ranges. So you have to check whether it's in these ranges here. All right, so if I run that one, if I type something like that, it's too big. Something like that, it's too small. If it's on the boundary between one of the grades, then give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay, so, and there is an outline for this one as well. First, they enter a score, and then actually all the rest of it could be done, depending on how you organize it, with just one big if, elif, else. Okay, so you could have your first, if the number is too large, then you're going to say something, whatever you print, that it's too large. Elif number is too small. Do that. Elif number is from 50 to 100. Right, you have some conditions for that. and just keep going on like that. All right, so that's 4 programs. My advice is always to test your program often. So get just 1 line of code, run it, make sure it works, then get the next line of code, run it, make sure it works. The check is turned on here, so you can run the check